Senior Deputy District Attorney Nathan Vasquez has been a prosecutor in the Multnomah County DA's office for more than 20 years. He's announced that he's running for his boss's job, Multnomah County DA Mike Schmidt, who took office in 2020. A graduate of Lewis and Clark Law School, Vasquez has run the DA's office's neighborhood unit and has prosecuted some of the county's toughest cases, including high-profile murder cases and leaders of the Proud Boys, including prominent member Tiny Tuese. Nathan Vasquez, welcome to Eye on Northwest Politics.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation.
Well, I would imagine that you trying to unseat Mike Schmidt is creating some interesting dynamics in the Multnomah County DA's office right now.
Certainly it doesn't make things comfortable, but the issues are so important that I felt compelled to step forward and to take on this this adventure.
Why? What's your priority in running for Multnomah County DA?
Well, first and foremost, in the last few years, what we've seen is that our community has become unrecognizable and unsafe, and it's compelled me to take on this role, because what we need is a professional prosecutor and not a politician running that office.
Is that what you think Mike Schmidt is, a politician who's running the DA's office?
Well, if you look just purely at his record, he's never tried a serious case. He's never handled a homicide. He's never done even really a complex or even really not a complex assault case. So when we talk about him doing felony work, it is very limited. And what we need is someone that has over 20 years of experience handling very complex cases day in, day out, and doing that with really focusing on the victims of the case and on the community.
You've talked about the condition of the city now. You've advocated for changes in Measure 110, which decriminalize most drugs in favor of treatment. What changes do you think should happen with Measure 110, and what changes can happen?
Well, right now what we're seeing is just unchecked addiction, and it is causing really just a huge and terrible burden, not only on the city, but on the addicts themselves, where we're seeing people dying every day. So what we have isn't working, and it needs to change. Now, I'm certainly not advocating to go back to some war on drugs or something of that nature, but we shouldn't be abandoning our community. We shouldn't be abandoning those individuals on the streets, and we should be looking for ways in which we can get them connected with services, because currently that's just not happening.
Are there enough treatment facilities or treatment centers to send the people who are on the street to?
Well, I think those are both in place and coming. And the issue, though, is whether we had all the treatment in the world or not, there's no incentive or even opportunity to connect those individuals with treatment. And so as many of those as we build, if we continue with our current system, we're not going to see people just voluntarily waking up one day and saying, oh, I'm going to now, in my current state, where they are very addicted and in crisis often, just suddenly realize that they want to go to one of these treatment centers.
Won't changing 110 take action from the legislature?
Absolutely. But as the elected DA, and really in Multnomah County, you have an opportunity as one of the top law enforcement officials in the state to advocate for that change. It's just like the elected DA, Mike Schmidt, advocated for Measure 110 in a way in which had no real clear plan. What we can do when I'm elected as DA is put together that plan, advocate for that through the state legislature, and really push to have meaningful change where we are helping the community.
A bully pulpit, so to speak.
But it's a bully pulpit with experience and with an expertise that comes from actually having worked and served in this arena for the past 2 decades.
Earlier this week, we learned that there's a person of interest named Jesse Calhoun in the recent deaths of 4 area women. There were public concerns before that there might be a serial killer in this area. I know you can't talk a lot about this case, but what do you expect out of this? Will there be an arrest? And where does this go from here from the standpoint of the DA's office?
Certainly, and where I want to start is first saying it is so terribly tragic and horrible that these families are having to go through this and that those victims lost their lives. And that is really, as the DA, that's where we should always start, is focusing on the victims and the lives that have been lost. And in that particular case, there were some really concerning things about the commutations that occurred and the commutations that weren't carefully looked at. And what I can say is that the men and the women that work in the Multnomah County DA's office are working extremely hard on this, and they are collaborating with the other counties that are involved, and they are really trying to push towards bringing forth justice and getting this case to grand jury.
And that's where it would go next, to a grand jury
Yes.
to determine an indictment?
In the process, in the criminal justice system process, what happens is there's an investigative phase, and then that investigation, once it is completed, or as part of it, the grand jury is convened and witnesses are brought forth, and then the grand jury is asked to determine if there's sufficient evidence to issue criminal indictments.
Last question on this. Would there be some type of criteria or protocol for declaration that, yes, this is a serial killer case?
You know, in Oregon's framework of statutes, there's not a specific designation to say this is a serial killer. That's often something we allow, you know, or the media and others talk about. For us, we are very much focused on the victims and the fact that this is, the potential for multiple murder counts.
Overall, crime has been going down in Multnomah County, but we're still seeing a high level of gun violence.
Yes.
So are we prosecuting more gun-related crimes?
Well, I think there's an effort to try to do that, but currently it is falling short. What we're seeing right now is year after year increases in the homicides we've seen, and that has been very alarming and concerning because it's disproportionately impacting our communities of color, and they're falling, unfortunately, victim to this at a far disproportionate rate. And it is something that really needs to be a greater emphasis and a greater effort to combat this.
The public defender crisis. How does this affect the Multnomah County DA's office, and are you satisfied with what the legislature did this session in order to bring more public defenders online?
Well, the public defender crisis is one part of an overall scheme of issues that are really grinding our system to a halt. When we talk about what the legislature did, yes, it was a step in the right direction. I do want to see our public defender, our counterparts, to be paid appropriately and want them to be funded so that we can get cases through, absolutely. But currently, there's not enough being done. There are many cases where we see people failing to appear, and right now, we are not charging crimes that can be associated with that, because when those individuals don't appear and that system doesn't go forward to our courts, what happens is we don't get justice. As a community, our victims don't get justice. There's more that this office can be doing to combat that, and we should be coming up with policies specifically to combat the failure to appear of individuals when they're charged with crimes.
Got about 30 seconds left, but what do you think of the DA's office new emphasis on cracking down on retail theft and car theft in the community?
Well, this is certainly kind of what I would call an old idea, in the sense that we used to have the auto theft task force. We've had the organized retail theft before, so this isn't something new. And when I put this forward and suggested this, approximately a year ago, it was really to say, look, we need more collaboration. We need more effort. Part of the unit that I lead up is called the Strategic Prosecution Unit, where we use data, and that's really kind of a way in which we can be smarter and more effective in how we prosecute crime, and we can really seek to find more of those cases out there and serve more victims and serve the community. Senior Multnomah County Deputy District Attorney Nathan Vasquez, thank you for joining Eye on Northwest Politics. Thank you, sir.